Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Truth Seeking Gal. I am here today. This is Thursday morning, 10 o'clock. I'm here with Brice Watson from Esoteric Atlanta. This is a treat. We get to meet and talk, and I really appreciate you coming on here, Brice. Thank you so much for joining me. Please, if you'd like to say anything to start us off.
Well, I appreciate being here. Thank you for having me. It's always a treat to come on somebody else's platform. So thank you so much for having me this morning.
Great, great. I really appreciate it. All right, well, let's get started. I had a couple of questions to start off with, Brice, if you'll. Anyway, so I have, how long have you been awake to what's going on? I know we have to be careful what words we use. So,
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think for a lot of us, it was kind of a compilation of like there was many things that happened over the course of probably our lives that brought us to this precipice. And there's a couple of big red pills that I took. One was the blood group, the blood types. That was a big red pill for me.
uh,
Another was the Saturnalian Brotherhood. And I don't know if many people know about the Saturnalian Brotherhood. I have a video. I think think it's still up on my channel. Sometimes YouTube likes to just take them down. So that was it was, if I remember correctly, it was about 2015 or right at the precipice of 2016. I was in India, where I go before all this happened. I would go to spend a good portion of my year in India studying with my teacher there. And we do this thing in India called oil baths. And what an oil bath is you cover your body in castor oil and you sit with castor and it pulls out inflammation. And so the form of yoga that I do is very intense, very intense. And so these oil baths we would do once a week. And so you put a towel out on the floor. And if you're new to oil bathing, you only do it for like 10 minutes, but I would sit for about an hour with it on to pull because it drains you everything. And then you sleep really well that night, but then you get in the shower and you scrub it off. But some people that are far better than me will sit and meditate for that time. But usually what I would do is I would put YouTube up and watch, reality TV while I was oil bathing. But my boyfriend wanted me to watch this lecture by Jordan Maxwell about the Saturnalian Brotherhood. And I put it on my laptop and I had oil all over me. So I couldn't stop it. I couldn't touch my laptop. So I had to watch it. And it was almost like, they say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So it's almost like God was like, okay, you want to know? You're not going to be able to stop this. This train is not going to stop. And so I sat through the whole hour of him speaking at this lecture. And I literally, they say sometimes with red pills, you have to take the black pill as well, because it puts you into like a depression when you realize that nothing you thought was true or real is real. And that was the first glimpse. Now, with the practice of yoga, it is part of that practice is being able to see the truth through the illusion and to know we have this term called Maya in the Yoga Sutras, where the world around you is really just an illusion, And so what the whole point is to come inside yourself, to find God within. So I already had that background, but a lot of times with theory and philosophy, the theory and philosophy are easy to understand, but when you put it into practice, it's a whole different story. And so with that Jordan Maxwell lecture, it was like, holy crap, nothing that I thought was real is real. This is all sinister. There's a sinister thing going on. And of course, this was right at the beginning of Mr. T and that whole thing. And I remember that was that 2016 competition, we'll say. That was the one competition that I didn't vote in. Usually I vote all the time. But there was something that happened between Mr. T and Mrs. C that I didn't know where to go, because the media was saying all these things about this one, but I knew that this one was really bad. And so I was just so like, you know what, I'm gonna go to India. I'm just gonna let God take over. I'm not even gonna go and do my duty. And when he won the competition, that next morning when I was in India, I remember sitting in a cafe and they had it on the TV, and I was like, and everyone was freaking out, like, oh my God, this is awful. And I remember sitting back thinking, wait a minute, this is gonna be interesting. Something inside of me was like, this is going to be interesting. He's not a politician and he's a really good businessman.
Right.
This is going to be interesting. And I was at peace with everything. And then of course, come to find out over the next 4 years, we had the military back channel, we had all this stuff happening. And my boyfriend is someone who's been knowing, we'll say a knower since 2001, since the events of 2001. And so
Okay.
he's been waiting for this for a long time. So he was instrumental, and he would just kind of tell me things,
Mhm.
like mention things. And so it finally started to really, really, really unravel. And the funny thing is when it comes to the young people, we
Right.
can't say the C word guys anymore because gotta love all these platforms, but the young people, I
Right.
actually don't remember though when I was told about that. I don't remember.
Uh,
All of a sudden I just knew it. It was just something I knew was going on. I don't remember actually sitting down and like being told what was happening.
right.
This business that they do with
Right.
everybody knows, I think, what we're talking about. So, and it's interesting though, I think for a lot of us though, even leading up to that point, I was always kind of a weird kid. I was always into spirituality, and I always
Mhm.
kind of, down here in the deep South, everywhere's haunted. So we've always had ghosts. My mother, who's a very devout Christian, told me my first ghost story. So, it's just very much part of our folklore down here. So I
Right.
always kind of was interested, and that's what we're finding now is what we're going through is really very spiritual
Yeah. Yeah,
and
they say
really
it's biblical. So
absolutely.
that totally.
Absolutely. It's very biblical. And it's funny that all these different philosophies and religions, they all say the same thing about this time period.
Oh,
You know,
wow. I
and
didn't
the
know
one
that.
yeah. Now the one thing that we in the if you grew up Christian,
Mhm.
which I grew up Presbyterian,
Yeah,
we
I
were
grew up
taught,
Catholic.
oh Lord, girl.
But no, I'm beyond that. I'm now onto a different. I
Say,
guess we're more Pentecostal now. I don't know.
okay. I was
I've
like,
gone the whole gamut. Like,
but I will say, I find with people who grew up Catholic, they either go one of two ways. They either have gone deeper into that matrix,
okay,
or they've totally come out of it and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense now. That
yes.
makes sense
And I
now.
have met so many former Catholics that are now other denominations, and it's like, wow, and it's neat to see how they've kept their faith. I mean, not necessarily denomination or whatever, but they've kept their faith, in God, and they're pursuing Him. So that's really cool to see.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I've always been a big fan of God, and that was my whole pursuit through yoga was understanding that connection to God too.
Uh-huh.
And growing up in the Presbyterian church down here, now in the South, in the deep South down here, we don't have many Catholics down here. It's all, most people are Southern Baptist. I grew up Presbyterian,
Right.
but your churches are like your social centers.
Yeah.
People go there to gossip and to socialize is the main thing.
Right.
Which is fine. Like that's just a part of the Southern culture, which I love. I love studying people, and I love
Oh,
studying
yeah.
cultures. So
Mhm.
I think it's hysterical growing up, after church on Sunday when people would come out of the sanctuary, all the ladies would be talking and they'd be like, oh, I'm just gonna make up a name. Did you see what Susie was wearing?
Oh my
That
gosh.
skirt was so short. We should pray for her. And so
Oh,
they can gossip if they just put at the end the
we'll
disclaimer.
pray.
We should pray for her. I just love it. I love it. I love it. It's my favorite. It's my favorite thing about Southern women is that they'll just be like, did you hear about we should pray for them. It's
That's
just
hilarious. But it is funny you say that about, the South. I mean, we just went to Tennessee in September as like a family vacation, and we went to all different places, but it's like we would try to count like how many Baptist churches we could find, like in so many miles, and there's like tons of them. It's crazy.
in the town that I grew up in, we went to the Presbyterian church. Behind us was the Baptist church. We shared like a playground. Across the street was the Methodist church. And then behind the Baptist church was the Episcopalian church.
Oh my God.
All there in the same like block were all these churches. And it
Wow.
literally is like a social center. It's literally a social center for people.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and I will say, I mean, I had some traumatic experiences even in the church that I grew up in. And even though we know it's so, the thing about the Catholic Church is they've made it easy for us to research because they're not so quiet about their, as our friend Janine says, their dastardly deeds.
Yeah,
They kind of have been pretty open about very arrogant about the symbolism and all that kind of stuff.
that's
And so
true.
it's made it easy because once you see it, you can't unsee it. With the Protestant churches, though, in a lot of ways, it's harder to see these things because the Protestant churches are also, a lot of them are also very dirty. But because we don't have things like confessionals, we don't have saints, we don't have nuns, and all, it's a little bit more vague as far as like what some people, and I'm not saying,
Right.
I mean, there are pastors and preachers and reverends out there that are good people who are trying to do the best they can.
Definitely.
It's not,
Definitely.
it's the fish stinks from the head down. And like
Right.
every organization, whether you're Methodist, Presbyterian, Baptist, they all have, it's all a business, and there is a hierarchy. And so some of these people don't understand that the extent of what type of deeds have gone on in these organizations. And it's not just the Christian religion, it's all the major religions have been infiltrated by this group, this bunch of people that
Right.
is our common enemy.
Mhm.
The Canaanites, this is all biblical, it talks about it
Right.
in the Old Testament, especially. It's the Canaanites versus the Israelites.
Right.
And we're starting to learn now that it's not necessarily like a physical heritage, it's a
Okay.
choice. Do you want to be
Oh,
a Canaanite or do you want to be an Israelite? Your
right.
choice. You choose.
Right.
You
Choose
know,
wisely.
choose wisely. Yes, and as Jesus, yeah, if y'all, Yahshua, Jesus, even if you go back and look at the New Testament, even in some of the missing books, it's like he kept having to tell his apostles that the Gentiles would be among them, and they were always very shocked by that. Like,
Right.
you mean the Romans, the Greeks, they're going to be one of us? These people that are invading our lands? And he'd be like, yeah, they're going to be one of you. Like, they're God's children too. And it was,
Right.
I'm paraphrasing as if Jesus were speaking in our modern lingo, but,
That's
but,
fun.
they were very shocked by that, but it is a choice you make. Are you going to follow the path of light or the path of darkness?
Right.
God, Lucifer. That in itself, that's what we're learning, I think, about through everything, is that it's not even about, at this point, a specific form of government. It's not even about a specific leader per
Right.
se. This is a spiritual battle between darkness and light, between God and Lucifer. And I think we're very close to, as Juan O'Savin says, that Red Sea moment
Yeah, that's true.
where
Very
God's
true.
going to be intervening in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
um because people are, you're going to have to pay. And the military back channel even said that, like, there will come a point where you're going to have to be very clear about which side you're on.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I want to be on God's side.
Yeah, well, you
That's
are.
no,
We are.
no doubt about it.
Yeah, no. Well, and did you read the letter that Archbishop Vigano wrote Trump, Mr. T? I think one time is fine. He wrote Mr. T. Sorry, guys. We were just chatting before we were filming about all the coding we have to do now because
Special words.
because
Trades.
yeah, it's like we're having to act things out. So it's a brain exercise. It's just exercising our brain.
Yeah, that's it. There you go.
Archbishop Vigano wrote this open letter to Mr. T back, I think it was like the spring of 2020. Did you ever read that letter?
No, I'd heard about it, but I've never read it.
It's beautifully written. And
Oh,
I don't do, he is an incredible writer. And so just paraphrasing everything he says doesn't do it justice. So I would definitely recommend anybody watching who hasn't seen that to go back and reread it. But in
okay.
the letter, he speaks about, I think he says the children of men and the children of the serpent. He talks about how there's two groups of people in this
Okay.
world, and there's a very distinct line in between these people. Now, what the church has done in a lot of ways is they've kind of, whether they know it or not, they've manipulated the concept of sin,
Oh,
and they've
wow.
made people very fearful of their eternity by actions they might be taking that
Yes.
that are viewed as sin.
Right.
And what Archbishop Vigano was very clear about is that, don't worry. There's groups of people, this bunch over here has made specific choices to
Oh,
follow the path of Lucifer. We all screw up, we all make
oh my
mistakes.
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Right.
but making a simple mistake as a human is very different than doing what these people do.
Right.
And it was such a beautifully written letter. And it was basically like, you over here, whatever guilt you're holding, whatever past actions you've done that weren't nice or whatever, you're okay. It's okay. You are a child of light.
Right.
And
Yeah, we've been taught so many wrong things about ourselves. So yeah, that makes total sense.
and in my opinion, if you mess up, if you do something bad that's considered a sin, but you learn from it,
Mhm.
and it affects you and you feel that guilt and you change, you course correct, then it wasn't a mistake. It was a necessary lesson to learn. And therefore it can't be bad. But what these people, it's like you don't accidentally just show up in some of these islands, we'll say, like Jeff's, Mr. Jeff's. You don't
Right.
accidentally show up there. It's not like you're just partying one night in the Caribbean and you just accidentally end up there.
Right.
You have made a very, very conscious decision
Right.
to be in these things, to do the things that these people have done. And
Right.
most people I know, even the people I know who are not the nicest people in the world, would never do that.
Right.
And that is one of the most liberating. So if you guys haven't read that letter, it's one of the most liberating letters because it takes the guilt and the shame off of you and you realize I am loved by God.
Right.
I am a
And in
child
the
of
end, that's
God.
what's most important, that's what's most important. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we just got to get these other people off of the planet because
Yeah. Goodbye.
they
Yeah.
need to go to the spa, as Janine says. They need a nice little trip to the spa
There you go.
in the Caribbean.
Right. So then would you say you've been in the church, so you've been awake for quite a while, but so then did you start like being part of I guess I can use this word, the truth movement or whatever, like after that then? Is that how you got
Yeah.
involved?
It's so funny. I was just talking to Catherine Edwards on the phone. We were just having a little girls chit chat before I hopped on, and she's got her platform too. And we actually just spoke about this.
Oh,
How
okay.
none of us, I don't think any of us who have a platform ever realized this is what we would be doing.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, my life was normal. I had my job, my business. We were just living our lives, doing our thing.
Right.
And I never, if you had told me, 5 years ago that I would have a platform, I would have told you you're crazy. Like what? No,
Right.
I teach yoga. Like what? No, I don't. I'm not gonna do that. Like,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden it was like this activation. I think for a lot of us, all of a sudden it just, especially when everything shut down, it was like we got to do something.
Yeah, you feel this unction or, pushing and prodding to do something. Yeah. Yeah, I've only had my channel since September, so I've been learning and growing and waking up and that kind of stuff. And I was like, should I do a channel? No, that's not me. It's just like, I'm a mom and I homeschool my kids, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna take the plunge and see what happens. So
Here's the thing. I'm gonna s- and I want to express this to everybody watching right now. You are perfect just the way you are. You don't have to be, in the military or like, a Hollywood celebrity. Like that's
right.
one thing that we're learning with Mr. T is the power back to the people. And I've heard so many people, like some people have emailed me and said, like, I really want to start a channel, but I'm just a mom, or I'm just a housewife, or I'm just this, or I'm like,
Right.
no, stop. No,
Right.
you're a mom. Yeah, you homeschool your kids. Yeah, but you're also a fierce warrior and you are a child of
Sure.
God. And
Hmm.
we're so conditioned in this matrix to think that there's like elite people and then
Right.
us.
Exactly.
You were divine. I mean, the same God who created the earth, who created the beautiful Rocky Mountains and the beautiful Sahara Desert, that same God made you too.
Oh yeah, that's so true. Hmm.
So you are, everybody watching, you are so special and
Yes.
your voice is powerful. And we are all, it's the whole thing where we go one, we go all. We are all, and the more we come together, the more powerful each of us get together as a group. And
Right.
so for anybody that wants to start a channel, but you're scared, I was scared too when I started my channel.
Me too.
Terrifying. It's
Yep.
terrifying putting yourself out there like that,
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. You're so
It's
right.
and you are going to get the weird comments. You are going to get that weird stuff going on, but something funny happens over time. It doesn't affect you anymore.
You just
You'll,
ignore it.
yeah, you'll see these, like when I first started getting like weird comments, it would really affect me. Like it would really take it to heart. Now I'm like,
Sure.
whatever, delete. Like I'm just like scroll, block.
Delete.
You
Goodbye.
know? So you develop a bit of a thick skin about that. But yeah, no,
Right.
you should anybody who wants to open a channel, open that channel. Like And the beautiful thing about this community is even people who've been doing this longer than myself, like I would not have the platform I have if it wasn't for David Zublick.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
oh yeah, I've watched him. He's amazing.
he's
Such a good
amazing.
guy.
We all help
Yeah,
each other. We all
we
support each
do.
other. We're a family.
That's what we're
We're
supposed to do.
Mhm. Absolutely. We're not in
Yeah.
competition with each other. There's no
Mm-mm.
competition to go. We're all on the battlefield together.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's a very magical thing as well. And so I would always, if you feel the urge inside of you to start a platform, to start a channel, whether it's on YouTube or TikTok or what listen, I don't understand TikTok. I feel like I'm way
Right.
that is past my age limit. I'm just like, you young kids, y'all do your TikToking. Um,
Oh yeah, I
but if
don't do that either.
if you feel that urge, that might be God poking you, like,
That's true.
step up. Yeah,
That's
you're gonna
true.
get backlash, but you get backlash with everything in life. There's
Oh,
always gonna be people out there that are gonna do that. So,
right.
and for me anyway, on my channel alone, like my subscribers, I feel so lucky. I have the coolest people that watch
Mhm.
and just leave this the most incredible comments. And I love seeing the discussions they have with each other. It's such a blessing. And so that
Right.
way outweighs the negative backlash.
That's a good point. Very good point. Yeah, the benefits just weigh that. Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. Yep. Yes. Well, good. Great. I have another couple questions for you about waking other people up. Have you been able to, I mean, probably through your YouTube channel, of course, but you have people around you that you've been able to wake up? Because that's been difficult for me.
That's a hard thing. I've actually lost friends in my like I hate saying in my real life because YouTube is my real life too, but in like my in-person life, I've lost a lot of friends because of
Oh,
speaking out. And I think we all have.
right.
But the thing is once I lost those friends, new friends came around through YouTube,
Yeah,
through
that's
all
true.
through all these platforms. Um, excuse me, my nose runs under these lights sometimes. I've made all these new friendships and new connections with people, and so it's kind of the good has outweighed the bad, but that's hard. It's hard. It is
Yeah.
easier to fool someone than to convince them that they have been fooled.
Oh, yeah, I think I saw that a couple places on Telegram, like Mark Twain, I think said
Yeah.
that or something. Yeah, I've seen that many times. It's so true. Oh my goodness.
And I've talked to Catherine Edwards and I have talked about this. Like I know for me, I've wanted to like scream and shake people sometimes, but people don't respond that way. You have to come at people with kindness. And I think for a lot of people who are still unaware of what's going on,
Right.
maybe just kind of like what my boyfriend would do to me, just kind of mention something.
Yeah, little like crumb types. Because I was talking with Mrs. Handy, are you about that? And she's like, yeah, just give little crumbs or ask like questions about things. Like, have you noticed? I forget what it was she told me, but have you noticed this about such and such or something? So yeah, that's probably the best way to do it because you're like, "Okay, I've got all this information in my head, and I'm like, I want people to know, but it's like a
You want to
little at a
sit down and be
time.
like, listen, this is what's happening. This is what's been going on, but they're not going to respond to that, especially when, the TV is in the room just constantly,
Right.
we don't watch TV here. We just use the internet and that's it. But whenever we're with my boyfriend's family or his parents constantly have Fox on all day.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
every time we're down there, I'm like, I feel my mood shifting because it's just constantly
Oh my goodness.
fear, fear,
Yeah.
fear, 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 fear. And it's
Yes.
it's it's all nonsense. Like it's not even
Oh, I know. Not even truth at all.
no,
No.
it's like a telenovela. Like it's not even they're better actors than the people on Hollywood. It's not even
Right.
remotely anything to do with what the reality is. And
Right.
so you're kind of going up against a beast if people have that in their houses when they're constantly hearing um the television. So you're going up against that, and
Right.
they have been programmed to think a certain way. And when people come out of CULTs, just regular old CULTs, they have to go through a deprogramming therapy. And there are
Oh,
people
okay.
that work, therapists that work, and so you think about the majority of people are going to have to go through an actual process of therapy to deprogram from the mind control that they have been put under. And so if
Wow.
you think about it that way, don't come at people aggressively. I mean, I've made that mistake before.
Yeah.
You know, just like, come on, you're smarter than this. Like, wake up.
Yeah, you want to shake them. Wake up. Wake up.
You are smarter than this. This is all BS. Like, there's not,
Right.
it's
Totally.
complete, come use your common sense here.
Right.
But you know, and I look at what the military has done and what the good guys have done, and the way that they've played this out has been genius.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And they've done it in a way that's been very like non-aggressive, where they're just slowly allowing things to reveal themselves.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a
They're
really
not
good
coming
point.
on the TV and saying like, this is this is that, blah, blah, blah. No, they're constantly just kind of letting, like we were taught before we started filming, we were talking about the competition, the last big competition we had here to pick the president, the leader of our corporation, we'll say.
Yeah.
And the way that they did that was so genius with the, you know, the I don't know when I use the R word, but the meetings that were happening all over the country with one team.
Gotcha.
And Mr. T, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people were showing up. It was huge.
Right.
The other team and their pepper rallies, we'll call them a pepper rally, they would have like 2 people.
Right.
You know, and then we know that the competition that the T team won in such a big hit at such a big home run that the other team had to like really show their cards in order to win the competition. I hope you guys know what we're talking about. But it made people scratch their head and go, wait a minute, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
They played this out in a way that made it so obvious for the average Joe to be like. And then you start thinking about other competitions in the past between other teams, and you're like, wait a minute. If this happened now, what about back in 2000 or, you know, 2008 or, you know?
Right. Right.
And I think other countries also watching all of a sudden going, wait a minute, if this happened there. So it's genius.
Oh, it is
what they've done.
Oh my, yeah. So amazing.
There's a reason why God put them in that position, because if it were me, I'd been like, listen, I'm done.
It's like,
yeah, what's happening? Arrest the call.
That's right.
Get on with it.
Let's just move on with life. Yes, totally.
So there's a reason why I have the YouTube and they do that.
There you go. There you go. We figured it out.
Because those people, Mr. T, they have the patience of a saint, because they've been able to maneuver through this with grace and strength in ways that I don't think I think I would have lost it by now.
Oh, me too. So, yeah. Yeah.
So God bless them. God bless them.
They definitely have more patience. Wow. Yeah. For sure. Oh gosh. So anyway, I've looked at several of your videos, not all of them. You have so many on different subjects. You've done history, blood types, of course, yoga, historical people. You have Mystery Mondays, and then you do a lot of really great roundtables with a lot of really interesting people and deep dives. You do that, and also Lost Books of the Bible, which I've been totally enthralled with. It's amazing. So I had a couple questions for you before we get into the Lost Books of the Bible. So how do you decide on what to research, or just falls in your lap?
Well, so I'm a weirdo. I love weird stories. I've always been the kid that wanted to know the folklore and the legends, and you know, maybe that's my upbringing, being from the deep South. That's part of our culture down here. My mother her family's from the Low Country, which is the coastline of South Carolina and Savannah, Georgia, which is there's a lot of like it's kind of like New Orleans. I mean, the three sisters of the South are Charleston, Savannah, and New Orleans. So there's some commonality in the culture there, even though New Orleans was a French colony and the other two were English. We grew up with the Gullah and the Geechee, which of course they practice forms of voodoo, as well as in New Orleans. So we were constantly around these French stories. And like I said, I kid you not, every freaking place in the South is haunted.
Wow.
So we grew up with ghost stories. Like that was just normal. Like we talked to my mother, who is a very conservative Christian, told me my first ghost story. That's just part of our heritage down here in the South, and it's so damn hot down here and humid. Like you can literally see them. Like it breathes.
Oh,
It's just
wow.
part of our culture. And so I
Mm,
think that's kind of what prepped me for wanting to look into different situations differently. And I've always loved history too. I think being an American
mhm,
of European descent, I think that kind of because America is such a young country, that we all kind of know from whence we came and why we came. And that was always something that was very important to my parents, that we understood like what it meant to be an American and how
right.
important it was and why our ancestors left Europe. And
Mhm,
important. So I think that was kind of instilled in me. But then when you're not genetically from the area, you want to know more about where your ancestors came from. And so I started digging into history. Well, then
right.
I found when we started to understand how much we've been manipulated, I was like, I want to know about I want to see if I can find these patterns in history as well. And
Oh,
so I
cool.
started digging into more historical things, and Lord have mercy, it has been in front of our faces this whole time.
Oh, wow.
I mean, the most interesting family to study I have found has been the House of Bourbon, which
Oh,
are the French royalty,
mhm.
that they settled New Orleans. Louis the 14th, everybody knows the Sun King, Versailles. Now, English royalty, they're all related. They're all like same family. But
Yeah.
the English royalty, they're a little bit more vague about their practices. They're not as upfront about their true religion. But
Okay.
if you look into the House of Bourbon, they don't hide it. Like they're
Wow.
pretty open about the fact that they're Satanist, you know. And even before the House of Bourbon, right before Henry IV of France took the throne and created the House of Bourbon, that the house before him was the House of Valois, which the matriarch of that house was a woman named Catherine de Medici, and she was from an Italian banking family. Sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
She was big time Satanist, big time.
Wow.
And there's even letters you can find, old letters where people accused her of eating young.
Mm. Oh my gosh.
Trying to be careful what I say,
I
but
know you've got it. Yeah.
yeah, and drinking the party substance that we all know and
Oh
love now.
my.
Yeah, so it's been
Awful.
in front of our faces this whole time. It's been going on, and we just had no idea. Maybe our ancestors did know, but there was just nothing they could do about it. Maybe they did know, but they couldn't go up against. Maybe that's
Right. They
part of the
felt
reason why they came here. I don't
right.
know. But yeah, so it's interesting just to do deep dives into these families, because
Wow.
you start to see the bigger picture of what's been going on for the last literally 6,000 years.
That's crazy. Oh my. Yeah. Phew. So bizarre. Sometimes it's so, like you hear about it and you're like, is this really believable? But it's just you're like, ooh, wow.
Yeah, 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 and it is
Yeah.
in like the missing books of the Bible. That is something that I feel like God led me to do, because when I started my channel, I had no intention of going through the missing books of the Bible. Um,
Right.
and I knew that they existed. I knew that there were other books that existed, but I am at peace with God. Like I knew that the story in the Bible had been manipulated. Like I understood that, but I didn't know to what extent. And it didn't matter to me in that sense, because I'm good with God. Like I'm at
Mhm.
peace with the relationship I had. So the story didn't really matter that much to me. But I was on a live show with David Zublick, and we would do these deep dives into these, Georgia Guidestones, all sorts of stuff, Constantine
Right.
the Great. And all of a sudden, it was like God kind of spoke to me and was like, do the missing books of the Bible. And I just kind of looked at David and I was like, do you want to read the missing books of the Bible? And David was like, yeah, let's do it. And so
Oh,
that's how
wow.
it started. So it was
Okay.
almost like God kind of was like, do this, read these books.
Hmm.
Um, they have been, it's probably been one of the most eye-opening research that I've done. Like it's changed me reading these
Wow.
books.
Uh-huh.
It's been the one subject that's gotten me threats.
I've heard you say that on some of your other videos. Yeah.
Had a very scary this past week. Had a very scary threat to remove me from the earth plane
Oh,
from a bishop, actually. So
oh my word.
yeah, very scary. But
It's
here we are.
terrible.
So that you're over the target.
Yeah.
And part of
Wow.
me is like, well, people have been reading these books for a while. Why me? But I think it's because it's become a part of this movement.
Right.
So
It's a
therefore,
threat.
it's more potent,
Hmm.
and we're starting to realize that. And I think this is going to be the hardest part for a lot of people. We know that this matrix exists within government, school systems, entertainment, everywhere around us, we know that the matrix exists, that this
Right.
flesh has infiltrated. But when you start talking about religion, people get really upset.
Yeah.
Um, and that's when you have to kind of separate it and say, listen, religion is just a man-made thing.
Right.
Faith is what is real.
That's true. Very true. Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah.
You can have faith without religion. You don't
Exactly.
need an organization to find God.
Right.
That was Jesus's teachings. Behold, the kingdom of heaven is inside of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when this, and I didn't realize how many people actually need that story. They need the actual story that was taught to them by the church. And when they start to read these missing books of the Bible, or we start to read through them on my channel, it upsets them when they learn that some of the things they've been taught by the church are not accurate according to the missing books
Right.
and the original teachings, and it's some pretty heavy topics as well. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
you know,
Definitely.
there's for example, in the New Testament missing books, it's pretty clear that Jesus was not of a virgin birth, that he was
Wow.
not, that Joseph was his father. And I did more research into that. And
Uh-huh.
virgin birth is a satanic ritual
Oh my word. Yeah, they have
from,
just messed up everything.
yeah, from an incubus or a succubus. It's an RAPE of a woman of by a demon. That's what they still do in these ceremonies with
Oh my gosh.
Gaul or the dark cult. So
Right.
so that was something that they were trying to manipulate with us to get us to worship that kind of ritual.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
if you believe in a God that can give me that has miracles, miracles can happen with a person. That it doesn't have to be a virgin birth for the entity to be the Christ.
Right. That's true. It seemed like there's such a big focus on that, especially when I'm growing up Catholic and stuff. And I always thought it was interesting because it's like the Catholics had their own Bible and then you had like the Protestant Bible. So I was like, that just always confused me, you
Yeah,
know? And then the Bible I have now has like 66. I know you've mentioned before some Bibles have 60 and it's like, there's all these strange numbers. It just doesn't make any sense. So,
yeah. It's like, and even within the translations itself, like one of the most like awe-inspiring things to me was looking at the Genesis. The whole light. I say this on almost every channel because it was like, oh my gosh. When I read this, I was like, oh my gosh, oh my
huh?
gosh. Genesis 1:3. It says, God said, let there be light. Now, growing up,
Okay.
I thought that meant he created the sun so we could see.
Yeah, me too,
That
actually.
wasn't the
Yeah.
Hebrew word. The Hebrew word for light meant divine spark.
Oh, wow. That's so beautiful. Oh my
God said,
gosh.
let there be a divine spark. And somebody, I think it was yesterday or the day before in a show I was doing, so that you can actually see when a child is conceived, when the sperm and the egg meet, there's an actual spark that happens.
Oh, that just gives me chills.
So that is, God said, let there be. And the next
Oh,
verse, Genesis 1:4 says, God saw the light and it was good, and he separated it from the darkness. He separated you from the
oh,
darkness.
oh my goodness. Oh, that is so beautiful.
So in the very beginning
Wow.
of the Bible, they're telling us like, you're special.
Oh my gosh. That's just incredible. And that's just like the first few verses of Genesis. Can you
Genesis 1
imagine the
3.
rest?
Yeah. And that divine spark is in the animals, it's in the trees, it's anything that God created. And
Right.
so, it's like, so then I saw that and I was like, okay, well, riddle me this, Batman. Like, why did these priests think that they have the right and preachers to tell you whether you're in God's good graces or not when God literally anointed you with a
Wow.
divine spark?
Oh
That
my
priest and
goodness.
preacher wasn't there when that spark
Right.
happened for you.
Oh my goodness.
It was you and God.
Right.
Nobody else. It was you and God.
And that should give us such freedom. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Think of
And
that.
you see that in people's, and that's one thing, the more I study this and study the actual text and try to find the original text, the more I start to appreciate other people too. Because
Oh,
once
right.
you realize the spark is in you, you see it in other people as well. And there becomes
Oh,
this profound respect for other people because you see that spark in their eyes.
right.
And you know that we are all, and that you actually don't have, it's one thing too. Somebody's relationship with God is none of anybody else's business.
True.
Private. And so you start to go, you know what? There's a great saying that says, don't judge somebody who because they sin differently than you.
Oh,
I want to say, don't judge somebody because they pray differently than you,
true.
because they have that same spark that you carry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're just as loved by God as you are, and we're all brothers and sisters and
Right.
inheritors of this earth. And
Wow.
so it's beautiful. Some of this
That
stuff is
is.
absolutely gorgeous. I mean,
That
the fact that,
is.
you know, the missing books of the Bible and the New Testament also talk a lot about Jesus's wife, Mary Magdalene. He was
Yep.
married.
Yep. I've learned that from some of your videos. Yeah.
People have a very hard time with that, but for me, it doesn't take away the fact that he's the Christ at all.
No,
At
no, at
all.
all. No. In fact, it should grow our faith, I think, bring us closer to God the more we know about him. Oh my goodness,
Yes. He was a husband. He loved his wife. His wife was a powerhouse too. She was a priestess in her own right. You know, that he was a
Wow.
father, that he loved, he knows the love a father would have for their children.
Right.
He knows that. And to come to earth as a man and experience all of that, to experience the emotions of a human being.
Right.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It is. It is. There's so much we need to learn that we don't know. Oh my.
Yes.
Beautiful.
He was you know, yeah, it's gorgeous, and they've turned, what they did was they turned Jesus into a Mithraic sun god. They gave him all the quantities of like the Horus or Ra, the Mithraic. Even the fact that they say he had 12 disciples, which Ra had 12 disciples, Mithra had 12 disciples, but we know from the missing books that Jesus had like 70 disciples.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So didn't have 12. They whittled that
Right.
down.
Wow.
They would fit, this particular December 25th is not Jesus's birthday. That's the Saturnalian festival. That's the Mithraic festival.
Oh.
I think people have found that he was born on the 11th of September, which is why they tried to manipulate that date into darkness.
Oh, but that's funny. That's the day I started my channel.
Joshua's birthday.
That's really
So
cool.
it is really cool. It is super cool. And
Oh.
so we're starting to uncover all these things. Now, the Old Testament books that were missing
Mhm.
are even more fascinating.
Oh
You know,
wow.
like we know the story of Sodom and Gomorrah from we've been taught at least that it was homosexual activity. That's what we were taught. And my best friend is gay, so I absolutely don't believe that that's a sin at all. But in the missing books of the Old Testament, it wasn't homosexual activity. It was stuff going on with children,
Oh,
young
golly.
people.
Wow.
So they changed that. They changed that when they edited the Bible, which they have. The Council of
Mhm.
Nicaea, that's when they did it, and they changed certain things.
Right.
And they tried to hide. You know, they don't look at us. Don't look over here. Look at each other. Fight with each other.
Exactly.
Conquer and
Exactly.
divide. And so when you read this stuff, and I always read them out loud, I always go through everything. So I'm not gonna. At first, I thought about reading them and giving commentary, but I was like, no, I'm not gonna give commentary. That's another form of censorship. I'm gonna
Oh, I
read
see
the
what you
whole
mean.
book,
Right.
and so we all hear it. We all can hear what's being said.
Mhm.
It's just like there's been many times I've been reading where I'm like, holy crap! Like as I'm reading something, I'm like, that's wild. Like this literally now I see why they banned this book. You know, like now I get it.
Right.
They
Oh
don't want us
my.
to know. So it's freeing, it's liberating. And you know, I from what I understand, we're supposed to have 777 books in our biblical library.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too.
They didn't even give us a glimmer of what we're supposed to know. When you get to some of these, and now people always ask me this question, and I'll just go ahead and answer before somebody asks again.
Mhm.
The Vatican has all these books in their library. They have not released any of these books, nor will they ever release it. I do think the good guys have these books now. The books we have access to are books that were found in excavation sites.
Oh, okay.
So it's about 45-ish that we actually have our hands on. The Vatican did not release these things. They're not
Oh,
going to.
of course not.
Of course not. You know, they're not going to do that, but they have them all. And so, no, I do believe that the good guys have them now and will eventually release them to the public.
Mhm.
Um, you know, they dumbed us down in our education as well. But before the Federal Reserve took over public schools here in America, um, kids were learning Coptic Egyptian and learning to read Old Hebrew.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Another deep dive I did.
Oh boy.
So
Another
yeah,
rabbit hole.
because somebody I was like, somebody's like, oh, wouldn't you enjoy to go down into the Vatican? Someone gave you the key to the Vatican library, and I was like, honestly, I don't speak Coptic Egyptian. I don't speak Hebrew or
Right.
Aramaic. I'm not going to be able to read these books.
Right.
So you know, if 200 years ago, maybe we would have been, but they
Hmm.
took that ability away from us to read these things. So,
Wow.
you know, they've done a whole lot, but that just shows you how powerful God is, that God,
Yes.
still, despite every, I mean, and let's give props where they're due. I mean, this bunch, this dark bunch, they're not stupid.
No.
They've worked really hard, and they're really patient, but
Right.
God still at the end of the day, we woke up. So,
Right.
you know,
Thankfully. Oh my.
thankfully, thankfully.
Phew.
Could you imagine? Could you
Yes.
imagine if we hadn't? Oof,
Oh,
that would have been or if Mrs. C had won that competition, that would have been a
that would have been it. Yep, we're done.
done, done. Yeah.
Oh,
So
but yes, but thankfully God, yeah, well, yeah, we'll be thanking him for now till whenever.
yeah, yeah,
For sure.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But it was really interesting when I started, looking at your channel and, learning about the missing books, because I was like, gosh, am I doing something wrong? But because it's like heretical, I guess is the word, to look into this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, if God, and I'm like, I prayed and I was like, God, if you want me to know about these, then, let things progress. And so I'm just excited to read them. I really am. I mean, I'm not upset or mad at all. It's like, hey, Lord, if this is your stuff, then I want to know. I want to read it. So
Yeah. A lot of people too. It's like I always say on my channel, and David as well, like all we're doing is just reading them. And
right.
it's up to the individual to decide whether they want to take it in as gospel or not. And there have been books that
Right.
I prefer over
Hmm.
other ones. You
Hmm.
know, there are definitely some that have been my favorite, and some I could, kind of do without, whatever. It was interesting. It's okay. Let's move on to the next one.
Right.
Um, but yeah, and the funny thing is I did do a deep dive into Constantine the Great, just because I always want to figure out like why. Why did this
Why?
happen?
Hmm.
What got us to this point? And there's a very logical explanation is when you do a deep dive into Constantine and the
Hmm.
Council of Nicaea. That the Catholic Church sainted Constantine as a saint, but some of my favorite peoples to study their work as archaeologists,
Okay.
because I learned that when I was actually studying the Nephilim, the giants. A viewer had wanted me to do a deep dive into the giants, and when I was preparing the show for that, I found all these papers, and that's when I learned, like, oh my God, these archaeologists, I'm going to use their papers because they've got it all out. This is all here. They're just showing
Hmm.
you what they've found.
Right.
And so I did that with the Constantine and the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, where apparently he had a vision, all that kind of stuff. And once you start studying that whole story from the fourth century, it's all BS.
Wow.
It's all fake news. Constantine went up against a man named Maxentius. Maxentius, at that point, the Roman Empire had been divided into almost like a republic where it had different areas.
Hmm.
And Constantine decided that he wanted to rule the whole lot. So we call that the New World, and then starts with an O.
Right.
That's what he wanted. He wanted his new world. And
Even then.
Maxentius went up against him. Maxentius, he was not persecuting. Maxentius himself was not. Christianity was a new faith that had gone into the Roman Empire. At that point, Christians were being thrown into the Colosseum with lions, all sorts of stuff.
Right.
So there was a lot of scandal around this new faith. Well, Maxentius, he was kind of like a live and let live kind of guy, as we would say in our lingo today. He couldn't be bothered with this new. He just left him alone.
Hmm.
He was more like, you do you, boo, like that's fine, whatever, do you. And he also was upset because of the raising of taxes. They were going to start raising taxes on his people, and so Maxentius was really like Mr. T, and Constantine was like Mr. B, and
Okay, gotcha.
they battled it out at the Milvian Bridge, where Constantine removed Maxentius from the earth plane by
Okay.
cutting
Right.
this off and
Right.
creating it around. Well, then obviously we know history is his story. So then Constantine started rewriting history where he was the good guy and
Oh.
Maxentius was the tyrant. Now, according to Eusebius's autobiography of Maxentius, he had a vision at the Milvian Bridge where he saw Jesus and the cross and all that kind of stuff, and that's why he won and he was going to spread Christianity. Well, that was the second story. The first story of the Milvian Bridge, there was no vision. He added that in at the Council of Nicaea. He went back and added that vision story in because he wanted people to believe that he was the second coming of Jesus, that he was the prophet, that he was the Son God. Okay, this is how much of a malignant narcissist psychopath this man was.
Yes.
Yeah. Now Constantine tells on himself because we know in our world the truth is told to us through TV shows, but back then they didn't have TV shows; they had art. And in Rome today, right by the Colosseum, is the Ark of Constantine that was built to celebrate his victory of conquering the Roman Empire. And on the Ark of Constantine, there's no mention of Jesus. It's all pagan gods. It's all the pagan gods. So you would think if he had accepted Christ as his Lord and Savior on the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, that the Ark of Constantine would have been dedicated to that.
Right.
But it wasn't. Then Constantine moved the empire to Byzantium, which was named Constantinople because that's what narcissists do. They name cities after themselves.
Of course.
And of course, that was coming into Armenia, which they were going in to get the bloodline through Armenia of the Christ. But then he had the Council of Nicaea, where he called a bunch of bishops together in 325 AD to put together a canonized, what we call the Bible. And they had all these books that were written that were kind of floating around. And all these bishops were called in. Now people say, oh, the bishops voted. They voted and they were smart men. They all decided. BS, not true. These bishops were under duress. This man was a psychopath. This man had his second wife boiled alive and had his own son executed. Because he heard a rumor that they were having an affair, which turned out not to be true. Does that sound like somebody that found the love of God?
No.
Or does that sound like a ritual to you guys? Does that sound like he tells on himself? And so these bishops were that were leading up these small groups that were Christian were terrified.
Of course.
They were terrified. So whatever Constantine said, they were like, yes, sir.
Yeah, we'll do it.
We'll do it. Okay. And so after they had the canonized book, all these other books were labeled heretical by Constantine. So a Satanist was telling you that these books were heretical. And so then after it was proclaimed that they were heretical, he sent out his army to not only just confiscate these books, but if anybody was caught having these books or reading these books, they were sold into slavery, murdered, jailed. And we're not talking like an easy, no, we're talking like boiling some horrific ways to go. And so a lot of these early Christians, they knew there were revolts because of the whole Jesus birth story. He changed that then. That was when he changed the birth story of Jesus to a virgin birth. They knew what he was doing, that it was satanic. They revolted to try to get it back to the original story. The changing of the birthday, the removing of Passover, it became illegal. Passover was the last holiday that Jesus celebrated.
Right.
Why don't we celebrate that?
That's true. Yeah, there's so many holy festivals and feasts and things, that we don't celebrate.
Constantine made it illegal. Why did he do that? Right. All of a sudden, we've adapted these pagan holidays. In the Bible, it's very clear that the start of the new year is in the spring.
Oh, wow.
Which makes sense because we're coming from death to rebirth, right?
That's true. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
January 1, which is our new year, is the worship of the god Janu.
Oh my.
It's a satanic holiday. That fits in with the Saturnalian. So this is all the answers are out there.
Wow.
And so these people, the patriots of the 4th century, will say, hid these books. These books, the Nag Hammadi library, they were hidden literally in the tombs with people. They were hiding these gospels that meant so much to them, and hoping that someday we would find them. I don't think. Funny thing though, guess how many years it took to find? 1700. You can't make this up. You cannot make this stuff up. It's just comical.
No coincidences.
I don't think that they knew it would take that long, but 1700 does not. That number is not lost on me. That it took that long for us to find some of these books again.
Wow.
They're beautiful. They're beautiful books.
Amazing. Yeah. Oh wow. Oh nice. Wow. Now we're probably gonna run out of time here, but do you have a missing book of the Bible that you recommend someone start with?
My favorite so far, and I've actually contemplating going back and rereading it on one of the Telegram channels just to do it again because I cried. You can actually hear me getting choked up in some of the recordings. The Gospel of the Holy 12, which
Okay.
the original title is the Gospel of the Nazarene Way.
Okay.
Of course, when the book was discovered, they called it the Gospel of the Holy 12 because they didn't know at that point that the number 12 plus 1, 13 is a coven, and that's why they made it 12 apostles and Jesus 13 coven. They just knew that the 12 apostles, so that's why they called it. But the original title was the Gospel of the Nazarene Way, which they were the
Oh.
Nazarenes. That was the original Christians were the Nazarenes. It
Uh-huh.
is the most beautifully written book. It's the whole story of Jesus's life from beginning to end, and it is profound. If you think
Oh.
you know Joshua, Jesus now, wait till the guy, I mean, just the way he treats animals in this book, the way
Oh.
it's the way he treats women.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the most profound gospels out there. It's in my opinion, out of all the gospels, it's really the only one you need. In
Okay.
my opinion.
Okay.
Obviously don't censor anything, but like that's the one that
Right.
really explains from the beginning to the end of his life. And he had two wives actually. His first wife he married at 18 and she passed away.
Oh.
And then he married Mary Magdalene. So you see him going through these human experiences. He studied in Egypt as well as India. You see where he's
Wow.
going around as a young child learning. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book to read, a beautiful gospel.
And that makes a lot of sense because when you're looking at the four gospels, they talk about his birth, and then the one gospel, I forget which one, talks about, until he's like 12. And then it's like, what happened to those years between 12 and 30, 33, whatever the age is that, we don't know, but what happened to all those years in between? There's so much
Studying, getting
missing.
married, having kids.
Yeah. And it's like, why didn't they want us to know that? Of course, there's probably lots of obvious reasons, but it's just like, what about all those missing years?
Yeah, it's all
So,
there. It's all in the my next favorite is the Gospel of Mary, Mary
okay.
Magdalene, his wife.
Hmm.
She we don't have much of that though. There's some of it missing because the papyrus is disintegrated. So the
Okay.
rest of her gospel will still be surprised when they let us see all the rest of the books, but
Oh,
it's very profound.
okay.
Jesus anointed women to teach as well. And that was that combination of the divine feminine, divine masculine, the yin and the yang. And a
Okay.
lot of fundamentalist churches, especially in the Protestant faith, treat women just kind of as an object
Right.
that's there to birth babies, and that's it.
And to be controlled. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's not how Jesus treated women.
Mm-mm.
There's one scene in the Gospel of the Holy 12 where Jesus is teaching, and there's a woman sitting there. I mean, they're all named Mary. Mary was like the common name back then. There's
Right.
another Mary, not Mary Magdalene, another Mary that's sitting there listening to him teach.
Hmm.
And an older woman comes up and like hits her and is like, you need to go and cook. You need to go and get food ready. And Jesus stops the older woman and is like, no, she needs to be here.
Right.
She needs to learn too.
Hmm.
Stop this. She doesn't need to go in the kitchen and cook. She needs to learn
Right.
with the men. And
Hmm.
so he was very much, he saw the value of soul in both male and in animals. He was a huge in the temple where he gets mad at the merchants. We know that story from the Bible where he gets in and starts whipping because they're doing business in the temple. That's not the
Right.
full story. The full story is they were selling animals for sacrifices.
Oh,
And he was like, you do not sacrifice animals. That is not okay. Shedding the blood of an animal. Part of his arrest we know that he was arrested for blasphemy. That's what we're told.
right.
But in the Gospel of the Holy 12, it wasn't just blasphemy that he was arrested for. During the Passover, they brought a lamb for them to slaughter to cook for Passover, and he refused to do it because the lamb didn't deserve to die. And so he was turned in for breaking the laws of Moses.
Isn't that something? Wow.
So very fascinating. It's just beautiful. It's just such a beautifully written, full, complete gospel of his life.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, good. I know there's so many for us to read, but yeah, that's really helpful.
777. We're gonna be here a long time.
Right. Oh my. Yeah. Well, I've also heard too that there might be 888 because like the Book of Giants or something.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I
Okay.
have the Book of Giants. Some of those books, what we have left of the Book of Giants is not much though. So, like after we go through the yoga stuff, we're going to be going back to the Book of Enoch. And I kind of
Okay.
contemplated in my research, should we do the Book of Giants first? But there's not much there.
Okay.
So it can kind of be merged with the Book of Enoch. But then again, if the Vatican has the complete, then yeah, there could be 888 books. You
Right.
know, and you think about giants. I mean, have you been to the Vatican ever?
No, never. Mm-mm.
Okay, I've been to the Vatican and it's
Have
wild
you?
because there are doorways made for a giant. There are thrones made for giants.
Wow.
And I think we all just kind of walked by it like, whatever, some crazy art, you know, those Renaissance guys are really crazy, you
Yeah,
know.
really weird making
Yeah,
things.
what were they doing? You know, but now it's like, why were they building? If Vatican means the head of the serpent, there's
Ugh,
a Lucifer room underneath the Vatican. Why are they building structures that are meant to serve the Nephilim? Not because not all the giants were Nephilim, but all the Nephilim are giants. And we look at
okay.
like the Greek gods, like Dionysus, like all these Greek gods were giants as well. So were these the Nephilim? Was Dionysus a Nephilim?
Wow.
It's so are they trying to harvest like the Antichrist energy and give these Nephilim that are the demons a royal palace? I mean, we know the painting of Jesus that everyone has is a painting of Cesare Borgia, which was the son of the Pope. Like they've done this like weird, that was their TV to like try to get us indoctrinated into this idea. So it's all very interesting.
It
The
is.
truth, there's another Mark Twain quote, and I'm paraphrasing, and it's like, truth is stranger than fiction because fiction has to stick to true possibilities. The truth doesn't.
Oh,
So
right.
fiction has to stick to possibilities, but truth is truth regardless.
Right.
And so the truth is definitely stranger in fiction when it comes to. I mean, I told Catherine Edwards, if you had told me 5 years ago that I would be even questioning what the earth looks like, I would have told you that you're crazy. But at this point, I have no clue what we're standing on. And that's a scary thought. It's like, what the hell are we
Yeah.
actually standing on? Like, I don't trust anything that comes out of that little science. I'm not gonna say their name, that little
Right.
organization. I don't trust anything they say now. So what the hell are we actually standing on?
Who
Because
knows? This
what
is
are
all
planets? Like, I don't know at this point. Like, what is Jupiter? What is Saturn?
we're gonna have to relearn everything.
I know, it's wild. I'm like, oh my God. Like then you're like, you start talking about like time jumping, which time jumping is in the Bible too. And you're like, holy crap, what is time? What is a timeline?
Oh, I know. It's like so overwhelming. You just think, I think my brain's gonna explode if I take too much in.
I know. It's like, what the hell is happening? But that's the apocalypse, right? Apocalypse means to lift the veil. That's all it means.
That's right. Yeah, because we've been taught to fear it, to fear that.
No.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Melissa Red Pill the World and her
Yes.
work?
Oh, I really like her. Yes. Yes.
She's amazing. And
She
she
is.
always says, that the tribulation isn't for us. It's not for
Right.
us.
Right.
Why would our loving God that gave us that divine spark do that to us?
Right.
Why would a God who gave his son's life for us do that to us?
Oh, I know. Yeah, that's
It's
true.
about them.
Exactly.
It's their tribulation. We just get to sit back and eat the popcorn and watch while our president shits his pants in the Vatican. Which I have to say, if there are any White Hats watching right now, bravo. That was a little comic relief in the script there.
That's great.
We saw a meme of him standing by the hologram Pope because we know he's not around anymore. It's a hologram, and they're smiling, and Francis is like, "Did you just fart?" And Biden goes, "Some of it was a fart." it's just bravo. I mean, like that is just the comic relief of this tragedy. This it's not a tragedy. We're gonna, we're
Right.
gonna win. We've already won. But
Right.
if you can just sit back and enjoy the show, the military back channel told us, which by the way, the original gospel, the genesis of the New Testament was the Gospel of Q.
Right.
God.
Yes. Yes.
And they got rid of that sucker real fast.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
No. Bury it, burn it. But it's popped back up again. That's the one that's popped back up again. So
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Do you need to go or do you have time? I was gonna.
I have time. My next is at in like 30 minutes. So
Oh, okay. Well, good, because I want to tell you this really great story. I think I started watching you probably back in May, might have been April or May or something like that. Well, my husband and I went away for our anniversary weekend, and I had learned a little bit about the Lost Gospel of Q from you and maybe some other people. And we went to this little tiny bookstore. We had gone several hours away from our house and went to this little tiny bookstore, and we're looking around, and my husband was on the phone, and this lady was really sweet. She was asking where we were staying, um, and she was looking through this box of books that she just had brought in, and she's like, "Oh, look at these and stuff." Well, lo and behold, the Lost Gospel of Q was in this box of books. And I was like,
oh my God, I have shivers.
"Oh my gosh." She's like, "Oh, here, you want any of these?" I was like, "Well, let me give you a couple of dollars for it." Okay. And I was like, no way, this little tiny bookstore in this little tiny town of all places. And I was like, okay, Lord, this is obviously
That's a
you
God wink.
want me to read this. Yeah, I thought so too. I was just like, I
That's
didn't tell,
wild.
and I didn't tell my husband about it for the longest time until I started sharing some stuff with him. And I was like, this is a God thing. This is definitely a God thing for me to find this book in this little tiny bookstore that hardly had any books in it,
I mean, that's
So
wild. That is like supernatural.
yes,
That was
that
a
was
God wink.
miraculous. Yeah, the God wank, yeah, definitely miraculous. I was just like, wow, this is incredible. So I'm like, okay, then I'm on this journey. I'm supposed to be reading these books. So yeah, it was
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah, absolutely. I encourage everybody to just read these books. And part of the Q thing, the Q gospel, I'll say in one word, is that if you look at Matthew, Mark, and Luke, if you are the four canonized Bibles, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Matthew, Mark, and Luke all read very similar. John's the
Hmm.
one that doesn't, and in fact, in some of the verses, they're identical. But
Yeah.
we know that the writers of these books were not, in fact, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. That they were probably their students or students of their students. Because
Oh,
my
okay.
understanding, the original Christian churches were like schools where they were teaching people this like gnosis that are knowing. So if you look at the reality of these three gospels having very similar text, but yet they were living very far apart from each other, how is that possible? Well, it's possible because the two
Oh,
Genesis gospels that all the apostles, when they had to skedaddle from the Levant because they were warrants for their arrest,
right.
they took with them their collection of the Torah of their original religion, their old religion, and then
Hmm.
they took two gospels with them that were the genesis of what we call the New Testament, and that was the Gospel of Q and the Gospel of the Holy 12 or the Nazarene Way. And so these students that knew how to read and write and were listening to their teachers were then able to transcribe gospels dedicated to those teachers by using these books as templates to make sure they
Oh.
had the story accurate. So
Hmm.
when they're telling a story secondhand, they want to make sure that they got it right. So they're using these two gospels to double check the story to make sure. And that's why so many of these verses are very similar to each other.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I've always wondered that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was transcribed from these templates of the Gospel of Q and the Gospel of the Holy 12. So really in our Bible, it should be the first book of the New Testament, it should be the Gospel of Q, and then the Gospel of the Holy 12. Then the
Oh,
rest. And then before we know, and then you got the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Philip, the Acts of Philip, all these other, even more of all the other that wrote their own, students wrote their own, because very few of them knew how to actually read and write. I think Mary was one of the only few that actually knew how to read and write.
hmm.
Allegedly, Jesus did as well. Allegedly, there's some books he wrote too that
Oh, wow. That would
we're
be
not.
great to read
I
those.
know, God. They threw that sucker out. That was one of the first to go. They're like, nope, we're not going to show his gospel.
Oh, yeah.
So I've heard. I don't know for sure, but I've heard that his gospel is called the gospel of love.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, so it's exciting.
It is. I am excited to read them. Oh my.
People get freaked out. They're like, because the story we know, or we've been taught about Jesus, or we're finding out that the story they've told us in the churches is more of a sun god story. It's
Right.
not his actual story. And so people get really freaked out about it and they get upset. And I'm like, no. This is exciting.
Yeah, it's a good
Because
thing.
that
Yeah.
the real story from what I'm seeing from these gospel is 10 times better.
Oh
Like
my.
10 times better.
Oh yeah.
This old
Right.
used sun god nonsense from Ra and Horus and
Right.
Mithra, like this is old. This is
Get-
yesterday's news. Like
That's right.
let's read the real story, because the real story is so much better than what we have
Yes.
been sold
Right.
in our religions. And be freer.
Exactly.
It's liberating. It's
Oh yeah, that definitely. The freedom from it. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, anybody watching right now, you're all good. Like, no
Yeah.
matter what you feel guilty about, mistakes you've made in your past,
Right.
welcome to the club. Like, but God, I mean, God,
Right.
look at everything happening right now. That's how much God loves us.
Oh my. Oh, definitely.
I mean, you are loved so much, and you are more powerful than you know you are. You are so powerful. That's why they've done everything they've done, is to
Right.
try to disarm you. That's
Hmm.
how powerful you are.
Right. And they've used fear and control to keep us from knowing who we really are and who God is. Yeah.
Yeah. Remember that song from Sunday school, "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine"?
Oh yeah.
That's your
Yeah.
divine spark.
That's
Don't let
true.
them blow that spark out. That's God's anointing of you. And you, when you came out, a second anointment you had was when you came out and took your first breath. Was
Wow.
God
So
blowing
that
your
song's
breath?
gonna have a lot more meaning now.
Yep.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Yep.
curious about like the old hymns, how much they were influenced for either, I don't know. It'd be
Yeah.
something interesting to look at.
The one thing I love, the Amazing Grace has been coming up in my head a lot. I once was blind, but now I see. That means a whole different thing to me now.
That's true. A whole nother layer of meaning. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
true.
I once was blind, but now I see. So I am, in my opinion, this is just my opinion. I think in the new earth, we're not going to have churches anymore, or any type of religious dogma where this type of infiltration and corruption can happen.
Right.
I think we're just going to have fellowship. And I
Oh
think that
yeah.
something so major is going to happen, and we're all
That's
going to get a little upgrade that everyone will know. Will absolutely, we already know God. Like, even babies know God. Like, you, even if you don't think you know God, you know God. God's inside of you.
mm-hmm.
He's already in there. That spark of light. That's you're a fractal of Him.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
just like you're a fractal of your parents, your earthly parents. You're also a fractal of your heavenly parent. And so you already know God. You don't need somebody else to make the introduction.
Right.
You know Him.
That's
You're His
true.
child. So,
Yep.
have that sovereignty. That's what sovereignty means. Have that sovereignty, and to stand in that light, and that you are a child of a living God. You're not a child of the God of death. That's them. Their
Right.
God.
So true.
So yeah. So I think people are gonna feel way more sovereign in their beliefs, and therefore will be better to each other, because
I
we
think
feel,
so.
if you love yourself, you know how to love other people. If you
Right.
respect yourself, then you will respect other people. So it's exciting. It's
It
so exciting.
is.
So
Oh, so much good to come for sure. Yep. We have so much to be hopeful for sure.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. Great. All right. Well, this was fun. I really appreciate you doing this.
I know. I'd love to do
Yeah.
it again. If you ever want to do it again, let's do it again.
Please. Yeah. And I'd love to, if you have other people on, I like, is it Tamara?
Yes. Yeah. I
She's
can
so amazing. I love to hear her talk. She reminds me, it's interesting. She reminds me of my godmother who died when I was like 7. And she
oh,
just, I don't know, just radiates like her. And it's just neat. She just reminds me of someone very special. So,
I filmed with her this morning with on Charlie Ward's show. And
uh-huh.
Tamara is like one of my angels, and we talk on the phone a lot all the time. And I tell you what, next time I have her on my channel, she's getting her computer fixed. She's having some issues. So next time when she's available, next
Okay.
time I'll bring you on with me.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you. That'd be
Absolutely.
so fun. But yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely for us to get together and yeah, to do
Yeah, I
more.
will, because she is just she cracks me up. She's
She's
funny. I've been using her. What does she say? What Santa sleigh are you riding in on? I've been using that. I just
that's fantastic. Oh my gosh.
hello comment. Like, she's just
Right.
fantastic.
She's
She's
fun.
just such a ball of light, and just true utter love for humanity.
Yes, you
And
can tell. You can
yeah,
tell.
she talks me off of a ledge a lot.
Oh,
She's someone that definitely has talked me off the ledge. Her and Janine as well. Janine is that way. She's talked me off of a ledge before, like when you get stressed out and you don't. So I am, these women, these women who have been doing this for a long time have been that divine feminine is there to really help us push forward into the new
right.
the new earth. So so absolutely, I
Right.
will definitely shoot you a text next
Oh,
time,
awesome.
and we'll get you on with her
Oh,
for
great. I
sure.
appreciate it.
Of course, of course.
All right. Well, you have a great day. It was wonderful
You.
meeting you and talking with you, and I'll stop recording then. See you
Awesome.
guys.
Bye.